That's what I'm talking about. I'd like to thank you guys for coming out tonight. Let me adjust these microphones real quick. All right. I'd like to introduce to you my friend from the East Coast Horror Group. This is Mr. Michael Exler. You guys put your hands together. Mike, come on up.
East Coast Horror Group, Drew Seibler is going to do the introduction.
First, we have the beautiful Miss Ann Brody. Next, Miss Christine in the court. Next, Mr. Hugh Ross. Mr. Simon Bamford. And Mr. Doug Bradley. Mr. Shipper is currently predisposed and will be joining us shortly.
All right, first off, a softball question for you guys. How did y'all get involved in NIGHTBREED?
Are these things on? Let me fall.
Hi. Hi. I actually, I auditioned for NIGHTBREED in New York. I was cast out of New York. I think I was the only one who was cast out of New York. Craig was cast out of LA.
Why? What have you done? What have you done?
Hey, don't you knock. I'll open it out of Brooklyn all over your wrist.
To a place of people learning and matching up
So that's how I got involved. I was cast by Todd Taylor.
Doug, how about you? Hey, to the director, he asked me to do it. But you know that because I've done help. I've worked in theatre with Clive for like 10 years. Before Hellraiser, we shot Hellraiser, then Hellbound, and then NIGHTBREED. That's it.
And I had a similar progression, although I didn't work in theatre for years long. So yeah, I worked with Clive and Doug. Straight from drama school, and then went to Hellraiser and Hellbound. And then I nearly wasn't cast in NIGHTBREED because they cast Mark Allman, the singer, for Anarcha, but he just signed up with Sony Records, and
quote, he was going to be the new Frank Sinatra.
That's right. So
horror films didn't fit well being Frank Sinatra.
So Sony said no, we can't have him. So they gave it to me. That was me. Yeah, I heard you and Nick had both got cast, and I was going, well, where's my phone call?
I met Clive socially, and Doug in the dog company, and there was Clive at a theatre company, and Clive came to see me in a very extravagant show in which I wore a frock, a dress, and obviously the idea of Nazis and the dress or something, the actor part of it anyway, and so I got the offer, and I couldn't believe it, and I was thrilled just to play the part.
Is it right that Nazis originally was going to be a drag act?
I don't think so. He could play anything.
I was studying physical theater and mime with David Glass, who's doing the choreography for the movement sequences, and he suggested me to Clive Barker, and I went in and met Clive, and he kind of warned me about how physically demanding the part was going to be, and I was up to the challenge, and here here I am. It's a great time.
Wonderful. Let's talk about the famous Pinewood Studio that was like filming on that set.
It was great. It was really nice. When we started at Hellraiser, we were on Cricklewood Production Village, which was a kind of tiny little, how would you describe it?
It was kind of a village pond with ducks and a weeping willow tree. I haven't seen a movie for quite some time.
No, no.
And we had to pause when the aeroplanes went overhead. And there was actually one night of shooting on that, I don't know what, I have to translate, bonfire night, Guy Fawkes night, November 5th, where we let fireworks off. And I actually heard some of the sound from the dailies when we were shooting that night. You could hear the fireworks in the background. So we got promoted to Pinewood for Hellbound and stayed there for Nightbreed.
What was actually really interesting about shooting at Pinewood was we had a lot of sound stages that we used. The big Midian set was, that's not my phone, because I made sure mine was on. The big Midian set was A stage, which was one of the largest sets at Pinewood. What was very interesting was that the day I arrived, I got to stage A and I saw all of Midian, and Clive came down and said, "Welcome and take the week off." And I said, "Why?" And it turned out there had been a fire on A stage. And so there was a little bit of a delay while they rebuilt the ruins, which was kind of ironic. But the cool thing about Pinewood, yes, was every stage I went on, I would ask what was filmed there before. And one of my favorites was, when it wasn't being used, was E stage, which was a sort of mid-sized stage. And when I had free time, I would put my roller skates on. This was before rollerblading. I would put my roller skates on and I would roller skate around some of the empty stages. And E stage was where they filmed To Sir with Love. And I just loved being in that empty stage when those schoolgirl days. And it was awesome. There's a lot of history in that place.
Now, working with Clive, how much backstory did he give for each of your characters?
I was typecast. He said I was such a perfect-looking person that the angels couldn't actually improve on me, so they gave me tattoos. So I always knew that I was kind of typecast. And they, hello, welcome.
You must be seeing something I'm not.
Huge irony, but it's not true, obviously. Can't really remember what Clive said. He said to watch the film Death in Venice, and the boy that the man's obsessed with in Death in Venice, and that was what he had in his head when he was writing the part. So I kind of watched that, and it didn't really help very much, to be honest.
Good film, though.
Yeah, it was a really good film.
I don't remember any conversations with Clive, curiously, about Wilesburg. So I have nothing to offer.
I was told that because Nazis were an actor, it was all about play. And I'm always telling young actors, get very serious about doing play. But play means have a good time. And so Clive very much encouraged me to have a good time, which as an actor I was really pleased about. And we improvised quite a lot of stuff, which was great. I mean, a lot of the stuff was left in, which was very flattering and exciting.
You know, Hugh, you said something before about the theater background, and Doug did, you know, that I think that it's because Clive comes from so much theater, he really does take on a very, very collaborative approach to filmmaking, which is much more common in theater than it is in film. I mean, when you do a film, you're hired for what you bring to a role, but the theater really allows you to improvise, and that set was as close to theater on film as I've ever experienced. And I think that the theatrical aspect of the material. The one thing that Clive and I did talk about was early on, my first meeting, I think, with him, was about mythology. And I'm a big fan of mythology, and we talked about the Iliad, we talked about, you know, journeying, and so that was maybe one of the tripwires that he sort of put in my head.
Hello. I think you can also tell when you're watching a movie if I remember watching American Hustle recently and thinking and then the extras and Jennifer Lawrence saying that they'd been allowed a lot of freedom in the making of the movie. You can tell, I think, in American Hustle that everybody's having a good time. And I think on NIGHTBREED, by and large, we had a good time. We were a very happy crew.
Yeah. Apart from the poor sods who were encased in latex, I think, so it was probably quite miserable.
You were used to that, yeah?
Yeah, but I didn't know it. It was cool.
No, I was having a good time too. I mean, I would back up the collaborative thing. If I go way back in the history of the way that we worked in theatre, and I'm going back to the early 70s, so 15 years and more before we were filming NIGHTBREED. The same applies also to on set for Hellraiser. Everything was collaborative. Everything was built from the ground up. Stuff that we were doing in Liverpool early on, I always instance one show called A Dream, which was entirely built around mythology. We spent a year putting the show together. It had no script. We held it in our heads. There were words which we pulled together from disparate sources. We put the show together. We spent a year putting it together, and it was performed once.
Oh my.
And that also it reflects a lot about the way Clive thinks and the way he works. Having done it once, it's dead for him, and he's on to the next thing. And that is actually great for working in cinema, because he wants to create the moment, in the moment, get it done, and move on. But in the moment, he's open to everything. I've always said that he thinks on his feet. And the term "there are no problems, only solutions" was made for him, because he will always find a way, an imaginative way out of an impasse on set, which I remember happening on NIGHTBREED. So that history of collaborative work in the theatre was definitely coming through into the work of the movies, and I agree it does show.
You know what's really cool about what you just said, and actually that explains so much about each of the NIGHTBREED. You know, rather than making 300 of the same breed, 300 of the same species, every one of them was like a one-off of his imagination, which is so cool, and that so explains it's like you do it once and it's done.
And this again is, you're right, and it's absolutely again typical of Clive.
Yeah.
If you look, for example, at Aberrat, you see it writ large there. It would be very, very easy, and I think most directors would have done it. The breed would simply have been the breed. They would just have been a bunch of monsters, albeit, you know, gentle, kind monsters for the most part. But not with Clive. Every single member of the breed has his own story and his own history and his own reason for being in the breed. Well, a lot of which you don't really get a chance to explore in the movies, because you just don't get time to go into the story of each individual character. But it was all there in Clive's head.
So back to the first question of how we got involved. Greg wasn't here, and I haven't heard this story, and I'd love to know how you got involved with.
Well, I was actually doing a play in LA, and I guess somebody saw me in the play and asked me to come in. I just came in, met and read with Clive at once, pretty quickly, and then that was kind of it. They offered it to me, and I was flying very soon. So it was very quick and easy for me and fun. Interesting.
Now, Doug, you spoke a little bit about how Clive had all of his characters in his head and backstories. Is there any insights for any of you as to why certain characters, Boone's character was very human-like, other characters, you know, like the Porcupine character herself, were very grotesque. Is there any insight into why certain characters were more human-like and others were monsters?
You asking me?
I mean,
Hold on while I call Clive. Chat with him. I have no idea. Well, I mean, Boone was a human being first. So that explains his humanness.
I do know that Clive had a book of sketches.
Yeah.
And he showed me that when we first met. And basically, he just, I think he thought that these extra characters, I mean, Shooter Sassy was, I think, kind of an afterthought. So was the character, the large guy with the snakes.
Pelican.
Or I'm thinking of Tony Bluto.
Oh, yeah.
And yes, and he also was working with the David Glass Theater Company, so we were brought in together. And he just had all of these different sections and ideas in mind, and I think it was just his imagination.
I think in the same way that a city is incredibly diverse, he wanted the city of Midian to have a huge amount of diversity in the characters and the monsters and the creatures that were down there.
There's a book, The NIGHTBREED Chronicles, which I think is well shared. There's a wonderful character description and great photographs in it of all the characters, really, of all the creatures you see in the film.
It's not available anymore.
No,
It's not available anymore. Does anybody out here have that book?
You can find it on eBay.
Does anybody have it with them? Alright.
So the film was cut down from its original 2.5 hours, which they were going to release the Cabal cut. What scenes stick out to you that you filmed that were cut from the original version?
I have a good story for that one. It was my so-called love scene with Harlequin, which I was very anxious about since I was really a dancer, not an actress, and I didn't know how to film a love scene. But it turned out the love scene was Harlequin lying on a bed in my boudoir, and he's standing over him, riding around and dancing, with snakes crawling all over him, and him holding a snake in each hand, and snakes crawling all over my feet and ankles. And no one asked me beforehand how I felt about snakes. And actually, before that scene, I had to walk through a curtain of snakes and deliver one of my few lines in the film. And again, no one warned me that the curtain was made of snakes. So when I came in to do the line, and I'm walking through the curtain, and it's like, oh. So we had to shoot that a couple of times. But yeah, shooting the love scene with snakes was a gas because we had to do a lot of takes, and in between takes, the snakes would all try to escape through the holes in the floor because we're on a plastic sound stage. So we all had to chip in and grab the snakes and put them back in the bags and set up the scene again. So, and I would love to see that scene put in the back of the film.
And is that in the workman? So
I think it is. Is it? I don't know.
I haven't seen it in the Cabal print. There's a tiny bit of it in the very beginning.
Yes, the titles.
Yeah, and I asked Russell about it, and he said they can't find it, which is too bad, because it's a fun film.
Some pervy editor ran off with it. That's so funny that you talk about snakes. This is like a quick aside, but can I just say this one thing? When I agreed to do NIGHTBREED, I actually put in my contract that there were two things I would not work with. I wouldn't work with roaches, and I wouldn't work with maggots. Because I just had this funny feeling about Clive and roaches and maggots. And every now and then, we would be on the set, and Clive would walk over and say, "Are you really serious about those roaches?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'm really serious about those roaches. I'm not going to work with roaches." So he's like, he would come in one day and go, "What about scorpions?" I'm like, "Bring it, I don't give a shit. But scorpions, yeah, sure." So they brought these buffalo buffalo scorpion thing. And there's a scene where I I lean against this piano and a buffalo scorpion runs over my hand, and the continuity lady almost fainted, but I was fine with it. So that was done, and a few weeks later he comes over and goes, what about snakes? And I'm like, yeah, snakes are great. Snakes are fine. And I almost killed a snake because when I ran up the stairs to get out of Midian, I slipped on the stairs that were riding with snakes, and I landed, my whole body landed on this albino python. And when you hear me scream as I run up, it's like real, because I thought I had killed this beautiful animal. And then the snake wrangler, after we cut, I ran over, what happened, and he picked the snake up, it was totally limp, and he just sort of smacked it on the head a few times, and it just sort of picked us. I was like, oh fucking thank God. But that's just weird. The cut that I miss, and that I'm really glad that it's back in, is the nightclub scene where I get to sing, which is very cool, and that's the one that I'm sort of sad to see out and happy to see back. It's pretty fun.
I remember doing a scene with you, where you were snogging this dead corpse,
yes!
And they'd stuffed the mouth full of earthworms, and he was having to snog this thing, and I said, oh, that's disgusting. And they were all in your mouth.
That was it. We finished shooting the movie, and then it was tried out in LA. And all the time, the problem was, all the time with the movie, that Morgan Creek and 20th Century Fox were sitting like hawks on Clive's shoulder. And they then decided that various things worked and various things didn't work, and they would be more commercial if they put this in and took that out, blah, blah, blah. And actually, we then did 3 Sundays of enhancement shoots where and that was one of the scenes in the enhancement shoot. There were various scenes put back in. Actually, in the Cabal cut, there are some scenes that were in the original, plus some scenes that were in the enhancement shoot.
When we came back from the enhancement, I'd just gone on 3 weeks holiday to the south of France, Spain, so I had a really deep suntan, which didn't really fit with the character very well.
No. It was weird, because you found the movie was finished, and then suddenly nobody had to. And in the Cabal cut, Narcissus' head is chopped off, and that was in the original version. And then, flatteringly, they decided that Narcissus was a good character, so that they were going to make them Nightbreed 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. And so they decided that he couldn't be decapitated. So that was when, in the enhancement shoot, he lived and we had that scene together. Then you'll find me, and you'll meet me, and all that stuff.
I don't have particular scenes to point to, but I would suggest that the enhancement shoots were the beginning of the problems. Yeah. I think my feelings specifically about the Cabal cut, and it is a while since I've seen it, and it's very much a work in progress, is that what goes back in is just so many scenes that make sense of the narrative. What Fox did in the process of completely fucking the movie, apologies if there are children in the audience, was to just muddy the narrative and take stuff out so that the relationships between the breed and the stories of the individual characters we were talking about just simply does not make sense. And I've always said that Nightbreed is an absolutely extraordinary film, and like no other film that I can relate it to, other than something like Fellini's Satirical. Federico Fellini's Satirical, which is very much a favourite movie of Clive's, I know. But Clive was hot from Hellraiser, and Fox wanted a horror film come hell or high water. And one of the basic things that they could not get a hold of was that the monsters were the good guys, and they just wanted to be left alone and to live under the cemetery. You loose cannons like kids can pellet with, but basically they just want to be left in peace to live under the cemetery. The humans are the monsters. That was what they couldn't get, and I think the enhancement shoots were part of the process of trying to make the breed masculine, which also was fundamentally undermining the basic premise of the movie.
Mr. Bradley, you have a very distinct voice, and give me insight on why they would have done
I am not German. You may have noticed I do not have the German accent. Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, do you have any insight on why they would have dubbed your voice over?
I have no idea. I got a phone. I mean, the enhancement shoots were being done at Pinewood, so that process was beginning in London. Then everything moves to Los Angeles, and Dickie, I always forget his second name, who had cut Hellraiser.
Martin. Dickie Martin.
Who had edited Hellraiser, edited Hellbound, was the editor on NIGHTBREED, went to LA with Clive, delivered the director's cut, and then he left. He refused to have anything to do with what Fox were demanding. So the real damage was then done in LA to completely re-edit the story, so they could market it as a slasher, which is just laughably ridiculous. I got a phone call in London telling me that Milesburg was going to be revoiced. And it wasn't, there was nothing to negotiate about. It was just informing me that this was going to happen. I think in retrospect, I don't think there was anything malicious about it. I like to think it wasn't that what I'd done was so bad. I think they were simply saying to me, we have to ADR your lines, and we're not about to stomp through a first-class plane ticket and 2 nights in a hotel in Padilla when we can get a voice artist in LA to come down the road and spend an hour in the studio for basic studio rates, I think was what they were telling me. Beyond that, my feeling is an executive woke up one morning, fell out of bed and banged his head and thought, ah, Milesburg, he's German! Hence the German accent, which if the Cabal cut comes out, I will get my voice back.
There's something else. And they did the same thing to poor Catherine Chevalier as Rachel. They, I mean, if any of you have seen the Cabal cut, you'll hear Catherine's voice as Rachel. She's got this beautiful, vulnerable, delicate voice. And, maybe they wanted to make Rachel sexier somehow, and they used the voice of this woman who, at the time, she was like this top commercial actress in Britain. She was the character of this coffee company. And, I was watching this screening of it, and all of a sudden Rachel comes out and she comes off with his voice. Just doing Catherine. It was straight, and Nick too, Nick Vince, they changed his voice. So weird choices all around. But they're all back now.
So Craig, working with Cronenberg in a lot of scenes, tell us what it was like working with him.
It was fun working with David. He's kind of a, he's just you get a sense of his movies just through hanging out with him. And he's, I was like searching for God at the time, and he was like, "There's no God, kid, just forget it." It was fun. It was really fun hanging out with I don't remember a lot of stuff that other people remember. I don't know. I think I did too many drugs back in the day. So.
You were always in the makeup chair.
I was always in the makeup chair or asleep.
So much of what happened like, while setting up shots and
yeah, I was like 6
film
hours
shots.
in makeup. See, I can talk about that. It was hell. It was literally hell, and I would go to hell. And it was 6 hours, prosthetics. It's not like today when they can do it digitally. So I would be in the chair at 3 in the morning until like 9 in the morning. Then we'd start shooting, for a 10-hour day, and then they would, throw 2 hours taking the makeup off, and then throw me in a car and send me back to London. And the next day it started over again. So it was like an unconscious experience for me. The whole thing. I was just trying to survive.
Yes, but you could lie down after you had
That's true.
Very just now see I could never eat with my face on. I remember. Yeah.
I couldn't either. It was like I had a straw I could drink.
Yeah,
it was like
yeah,
otherwise your lips start peeling up and.
Well, That's what they tell you. By about Hellraiser 4, I was eating lunch.
But you remember the taste of that white glue, right? It sticks in your head.
No, and I was actually at the beginning of last week. I was at Tom Savini's makeup school in Pittsburgh, where I now live. And I walked into one of the rooms, and that smell hit me. Latex and glue, and it was like,
Apparently Neil Gordon, who did Narcissus, did he do yours as well? Neil?
No, Little John.
Oh yeah. This very weekend in London there's a convention of some sort, and Neil is doing the Narcissus makeup as a poor soul. Who's got to sit there and do that?
Mark Coulier, who applied my Wildsburg makeup, is now holder of an Oscar for his work on Margaret Thatcher's makeup on the Iron Lady.
We hated her.
I'm actually glad to say, I think there's actually there's a trend coming back that's like, putting an end to computer-generated fantasy elements of characters, and I think we're going back to something that's a lot more real, and I think it's actually much more appealing for the audience and for the story.
I met up with a load of the special effects guys recently, and I was saying, these days it must be so much easier, we're 20, 30 years on, the makeups must be lighter, you'll not be able to see if you're an actor, and he said, no. He said, what makes you think that? It's much, much worse than it ever was. He said the makeups are now made of silicone rather than latex, so they're much more uncomfortable to wear, they're really, really heavy to wear.
Take longer to apply.
And just the whole thing, and he said they did try at one point, if the actors didn't have eye holes, they put little monitors inside the makeup. That confused the actors even more, they just got even more lost. So they still have most actors blind as they're working. He said, no, it's much worse than it ever was, so it hasn't really progressed much, I don't think. Not from an actor's
Not from an actor's point of view.
So let's talk about, I don't know if anybody seen the Cabal Cut, but talk about the alternate ending and how you feel it compares to the ending from the theatrical cut.
The ending as we shot it at Pinewood, as opposed to the ending in the movie as released.
Well, I have an ending now, which is kind of nice. How many people here have actually seen a version of the Cabal Cut? The rest of you have not. Oh God, you guys are gonna love it. It's so cool. It's I think that the ending, I know personally it kind of redeems me. It's the script that I read. It's the script I signed on for. It's the script that I kept telling everyone, wait till you see how great this movie is. And 25 years later, we're about to. But I think mostly it redeems, as Doug said, it redeems the mythology of this story, and it redeems Clive. And by the way, I got an email from Mark Miller at Seraphim Films, who waves and wishes he could be here. He was stuck in business in LA, but I think that that's what Mark would say too. It's a real redemption.
I of course prefer the theatrical release because Narcissus has name.
I'm dead anyway, so fuck it.
I'm dead, but they did promise when they were talking about the sequel that I'd come back as my twin sister, which I was really looking forward to, because again I was going to be topless, but I was going to have this beautiful prosthetic breast.
Which would have made you own knockers.
But if I don't, maybe more people have read Cabal and seen the Cabal Cut. If you've read Cabal, Clive adapted it as Nightbreed. Nightbreed, as we filmed it at Pinewood, not Pinebreed, is an almost literally page for page faithful adaptation of the novel. So Cabal, as it plays out on the page, is as Nightbreed would have played out on the film. You mentioned sequels. Is absolutely typical of Clive. The original plan was he was going to write Cabal, make Nightbreed, write Cabal 2, make Nightbreed 2, write Cabal 3, make Nightbreed 3. But I think a combination of factors. One, as I said before, that as soon as Clive is finished focusing, even while he's focusing here, he's also focusing on here, 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 and here. He's always thinking of 10 other things that he would rather be doing. So I think they probably wouldn't have happened anyway. But the disparity between Cabal as written and Nightbreed as released, I think, kind of killed that. Plus, when Clive came back from LA, he pretty much did literally look like a zombie. And I think his experiences in LA and his experiences of Nightbreed in general is the reason why he stopped making movies. I think his feeling was simply, why do I need to put myself through this process? If I'm writing, if I'm painting, there is nothing getting between my imagination and the end of my pen or the end of my pencil or the end of my paintbrush. There's nobody looking over my shoulder saying, we can't afford that, Clive. That won't sell in Omaha, Clive. We won't get the certificate we want if you put that in the painting, Clive. There were no middlemen getting in the way. And I think Nightbreed is the reason why there's a long hiatus before he directs again.
So one last question from us before we turn it over to the audience. With Clive, his writing, his films, you guys know him best. You went to school with him, you worked in theater, several of you have worked on multiple films with him. In your opinion?
I don't know that I can top that really. Passion. He brought. I'll go to Hellraiser because what I've always said about Hellraiser is that he makes something that is in many ways a straightforward 1980s slasher plot, and then he drops in this huge gothic element into the middle of it in contemporary, not as it was intended to be, New York as it became. Should we sing along? There is a house.
What do you think we should sing?
And the Cenobites are an ageless and timeless process. And he, I think that's, for me, that's what he did in terms of horror in the 1980s. But his imaginative map was always bigger. So as soon as I saw the quote saying, I have seen the future of horror, and his name is Clive Barker, I was thinking, well, as fast as you want to put him in that pigeonhole marked horror, he will be fighting to tunnel his way out of the back of it and go somewhere else. And Nightbreed was his somewhere else. And really the process of Nightbreed is of the studio trying to push him back into his pigeonhole. And it's a shame. It's also a great shame that the relationship between Clive and his producer, Christopher Figg, an utterly unlikely combination. Chris is a very kind of stature Englishman. In many ways, everything that Clive is not, which is maybe what made them a great partnership. They produced Hellraiser, they produced Hellbound, they produced Nightbreed. They had formed a company called Film Futures that was going to be based at Pinewood, and there was a whole slate of movies that were projected, a lot of which would have been adaptations of the Books of Blood, and other projects beyond, as well as further sequels to Hellraiser and Nightbreed. But we came into work one day at Pinewood to be informed that Chris had been sacked. And that killed film futures and ended the relationship between Clive and Chris, which was a huge shame.
I think, to me, I think that Clive is maybe one of the purest artists I've ever known. He really has, and to me, like, pure art is sort of this weird amalgam of curiosity and integrity to yourself. But what kind of puts Clive over the top for me is throughout it, at his best moments, he keeps a joy and a sense of humor in his work. He can't always keep it in his productions and the people he works with, and that's when I say he walks away with it, which to me is about as much a sign of integrity as you get. So yeah, I think he's a very, very pure artist. It's not me.
I'll second the joy thing. It's something that people ask me a lot. You know, what is Clive like? And one of the things I always try to portray to people is how funny he is. And the more ridiculous, utterly, stupidly ridiculous something is, the more he enjoys it. And that's something that people maybe don't expect straight away from someone with such a very rich and very dark and very troubling imagination. But fun and laughter and wit and self-deprecation pour out of him all the time. No pomposity around Clive at all.
Great. With that, we have time for 2 questions.
With the new release this fall of the Screen Factory's release of the ball cut, were any of you involved in any kind of commentary track or interviews for special features for that release?
Not yet. I don't think they've done them yet. I think that's still to come. I don't know if anybody else has done anything, but as far as I know, they're still to do those.
I haven't. I know nothing.
Yeah, I only know that there is a documentary being made about the making of the original film, and so I think that's maybe included in the release of the Bob Cut, but I can't guarantee. I know I think we're all being interviewed either later today or tomorrow.
Anybody else?
God, he's coming over to you. Yes, another question?
Same guy down here.
Dan, I would ask you, were you during the Babette puppet during this?
No. And you know, that's when they asked us what other scenes we're happy to see back in. The Babette animatronic is now that whole first scene of meeting Babette is really expanded in the Cabal Cut. And that was operated from offset. And it's kind of amazing, for me personally, it was amazing to see that because many years later, I became very active in animal rescue. And when I saw the Cabal Cut at the Mad Monster convention in South Carolina for the first time, I saw myself do my very first animal rescue because that thing was kind of alive in my hands, and it was kind of heartbreaking. It was really beautiful to see.
All right, well, thank you guys for taking the time out.
Thank you.
And put a round of applause for them.
Let me hear you make some noise. We're ready to Mr. Michael Exler from Western Ohio and the East Coast Horror. You guys put your hands together. So we're going to get started with the NIGHTBREED panel. Let's first
you might be wondering who they are. Mark found all the footage for the new BluRay release of NIGHTBREED.
Mark is the green
He was the editor, so we'll talk to them a little bit about that. So, Andy and Christine, let's talk first off. How did you get involved in it?
Oh, wow. First of all, thank you all for your patience today. It's been, has everybody said high five? Everybody? Oh. I got involved with NIGHTBREED. Todd Thaler. I was cast out of New York, Todd Thaler casting. It was a regular audition, and I went to his office on West 57th Street, and it was a meeting with the director. And Clive and I sat in this tiny little room, and Clive was smoking a cigar, and so I broke out my cigarettes, and there was no ventilation in the room, and poor Todd Thaler was one of the healthiest people on the planet, was getting smoked out in his own office. But we talked for an hour, and just totally hit it off, and I think it was within the week. They put me out to meet Craig, and I met Craig, and Craig's just awesome. And that night I was told I was going to London, so found out.
Well, I was studying physical theater at the time of David Glass, and I don't think any of you know who David Glass is. I came across him by accident at the Edinburgh Theatre Festival. A friend said, "Oh, look, we've got to go hear Philip Glass," and we thought we were going to hear Philip Glass. And I was looking at the program and said, "This is David Glass, and this is mine. We're in for an hour and a half of mine," and I was not looking forward to it. And then after 5 minutes of seeing David on stage, I just thought, I have to study this man. He's amazing. You know, he could do anything. He could narrate his entrance into a hotel, and then become the revolving door, and then become the character again. So I was studying with him, and he was brought to do movement for the film, and I told him about some characters that he was working on, Shin Sassy being one of them, and David thought of me, and brought me in to meet Clive, and that was it.
So, Christine, talk about the makeup work that you have done.
Makeup work. To begin with, I was brought in to have a mold made of my face and my entire body, and I was asked if I was claustrophobic, and I said, yeah.
Even if you weren't, you were about to be.
Yeah. And I remember being covered in, I don't know, slimy substance for half an hour or so, and having straws stuck into my nose to keep me alive. So basically they took a plaster cast of my entire face and body, and from that the latex mask and the bodysuit were crafted. And then getting into the makeup, it was a 7.5-hour process, even after all of that. And I was there usually
every day.
Every day that I was there. I wasn't there every day.
Sure.
It was over a period of 2 weeks. Sorry?
Were there days when you just did it anyway? You were like, I miss it, I gotta go back.
But yeah, starting around 4 in the morning. Yeah.
The first half of your description of that sounded like every Ron Jeremy film out there. By the way, he started DVDs. And the makeup, it looked so good though. Every second it seemed like it had to have been worth it. Like,
It was fun. I loved looking in the mirror and just not being me. It was a lot of
You're
fun.
like, I can be mean to everybody.
Yeah.
It was actually really hard to go past the special effects makeup room because you knew people there were so tired.
And I think
maybe the only person in the whole cast that didn't have extensive makeup.
Well, except for Charlie Hay.
Oh yeah.
And David. Well, no, David had to have didn't he have to have the mask made for the Decker mask? But it really was, I mean, people were there. 4 in the morning was so not a big deal. Everybody was there, and at any given point in time, you could walk around the set and trip over somebody who was just sleeping behind a piece of scenery. Because they were there, they were living at Pinewood. And you know, you would walk past the special effects corridor and just like not make a sound because your people were just exhausted.
How it's, you guys all have, being in the film and extensive knowledge of the film. Talk about some of the commentaries of the film. Does Decker represent what humanity is to the things that they don't understand? Is it really trying to tell that humans can't be the monsters?
Yeah, that's 100% Clive's message. It's no accident that the monsters are the good guys and the therapists. It's the worst villain in the entire film. It was Clive's statement on the authority figures telling him what's wrong with him, essentially. That was his statement.
I worked with David quite a bit. What's he like? What's David Cronin look like?
I hear he's intense.
He is intense. This was like back in 1989, and I thought it was the very first time I had ever seen anyone, because we would get driven out to Pinewood, and when David was on set, I would share my flat with him because he was living close by. He was the first person I ever saw get into the back seat of a car and put the seatbelt on. And I was like, is that because you're weird or because you're David Cronenberg or both? But he was actually a very, very passionate guy. I had actually done a show on Broadway with Jeremy Irons, and he had just worked with Jeremy in Dead Ringers. So we had a lot to talk about. He was working on the script to Naked Lunch. So he's got that sort of like Scorsese kind of intensity for film and for history, and I think he almost feels more passionate about the idea of making film and prepping a film and editing a film than actually doing the film. But he's a goddamn good actor. He really, really was. I mean, he's pretty creepy. And the thing was, he could just turn it right on. And I was like, dude, people go to school for that sort of thing. And you just do it. He was very, very cool.
Yeah, do you remember? Because Andrew and I have seen it all.
Yeah, I'll tell you.
There was the love scene between Pelican and myself, which was really me standing over the bed and writhing around, dancing, and
Snake.
yeah, there's snakes writhing all over him and my feet, and that's actually, it was a funny story because we had to have many takes of that, and first of all, no one asked me how I felt about snakes. And so we did a run through for the lines, and the first part I had to walk through a curtain of snakes, and it wasn't until I was actually walking through them that I realized they were snakes.
Oh, God,
and then
you didn't know?
No, I didn't know. And I had to deliver my line, and of course I forgot my line. But then, and I think that was actually part of another scene, and then, so I don't think that made it into the original, and then there was a scene where I'm standing on the bed, dancing over Pelican, and the snakes are crawling all over us. So in between every take, we all had to chase after the snakes because the floor, it was on a stage set, and the floor was just grills, and the snakes were trying to escape.
Oh, and then poor Snake Wrangler, he had such a tough job. I actually had, because it was a Clive Barker movie, I had in my contract that I would not work with maggots or roaches. And he kept coming to me in the middle of the film. He just about to go, do you like roaches? I'm like, no, I And the continuity lady almost fainted, but I was fine. Then he came up to me and said, "What about snakes?" I'm like, "Yeah, I love snakes. Just no fucking roaches."
Snakes over roaches any day.
No. But you know there's that scene where Harlequin grabs Lori and she runs up the stairs and there are all those snakes on the stairs.
Y'all come back now, you hear?
Yes. Well, I like scream as I'm running up the stairs, and that scream is so real because as I was running up the stairs, and it's not because of the snakes, it was because I slipped and I fell on this big, beautiful albino python. And I thought that I had killed it. And I just wailed, and it's in. I still remember, that's the snake killing moment. And after we cut, the poor wrangler, he went over to his like unconscious snake, and he took its head and went like, and it just sort of like, it's like it was drunk after a few minutes, it just sort of went like, what the fuck happened? That Crystal, I mean.
I thought you were going to say you stepped on an albino person
Oh, no.
going in makeup.
So then that scream and snakes, it's not because I'm afraid, that was
Let's talk about you finding the lost footage. How did that come about? You guys kind of thought about the process of editing and finding it, or it was
Yeah, and it was as simple as I don't know, part of people are as familiar. Oh man! Yeah, it was so cool! No, it was awesome. I didn't even know that there were, missing scenes. I just remember renting NIGHTBREED when I was 13 and being so confused and freaked out. And then I got to meet Clive and we became friends, and I wasn't even working for him at the time. I found out there was missing footage. I texted him and I said, "Hey, what's all this I hear about missing footage? Has anyone tried to find it?" And he said, "Many people have tried. All of them have failed. However, if you want to try your hand at it, be my guest. There are many minutes of missing footage, including," and he mentioned your musical number. And I just went to it and I started cold calling people, and I talked to Mark Goldblatt, who edited the film, and I just didn't let it go. And 6 years later, here we are. But yeah, it was crazy. It was finally we ended up finding some of the footage in a storage closet at Clive Studio.
I love that. I can't believe it.
Yeah, that's but he told me subsequently that the film was such like a personal disaster for him that he couldn't even think about it. So anything that said NIGHTBREED on it, he just shoved it away and never looked at it. A perfect example is when we recorded the commentary track for it. And we finished, I pulled out my VHS copy of it, and I put it in front of him and I said, "Now that we're at the end of the journey, can you sign this?" And he said, "Now that we're at the end of the journey, it doesn't hurt to."
That's, yeah.
So, it's just, it is hilarious that the footage was found in his studio, but it also makes perfect sense.
Yeah, I can understand that. I mean, it was the kind of process that, I saw it once.
Yeah.
I saw it once, and I just went, this is
not the movie I remember.
These are not the movies I'm looking for. It's like, this is not my movie. And then I had to deal with all of my friends coming up to me like, "Yeah, I saw NIGHTBREED. You said that was a really great experience." Like, oh, God.
I swear, there's
something in there. It's really there. So I understand.
Yeah.
And it really was his baby. And I'm so glad that all of you made this happen.
Yeah.
Because it was you guys.
Kept hope alive.
Yeah.
Hi. Yeah, hi. My name's Andy Furtado, huge fan. I want to actually bounce off this because this is something that really pushed me, because when I was asked to do this, I'm an editor, and I've edited like 2 things, NIGHTBREED being like the best thing I've ever edited in my life. Mark gave me, he said 2 things. Okay, out of you guys, by the way, have you seen the Cabal cut? It's 2.5 hours too long, and it's not a good movie. But it has all, I've talked to a bunch of fans about this because it's exactly how I felt. Everybody saw the movie, it was all missing footage, but the guy who cut it didn't do a good job. He just wanted to put in new footage for people to see. And it's just too long, and this movie, from the script, is a 2-hour movie. And in 1990, 2-hour movies were not a big thing. You had to be like a big blockbuster to be a 2-hour movie. An hour and a half was the thing. This movie, no fucking way is this a 90-minute movie. This is an hour and it's 2 hours at minimum. And the fact that the editor was hired to do a job was to cut the movie the way the studio wanted because they stole it from Clive, from what I was told. This movie, like, the way it is now, it feels so right. And like, for example, NIGHTBREED, the scene between you and Boone in the prison cell. Yeah. There are massive jump cuts. What the fuck was going on in that scene? That's not enough. You paid money to see that in the theater and you're missing it. But now you get to see.
It's very passionate.
I'm very angry, passionate. It's like an anger passion.
It's all there.
It's like,
I'm curious, how many of you have pre-ordered?
Hey!
Oh, you guys! Oh, thank you!
That really appreciates that.
You'll see all this again.
Well, sadly, we're kind of running out of time because of scheduling conflicts, but I just think I speak for all fans. Thank you for making the film. Thank you for bringing it. Thank you for your time.
Thank you guys so much.
Yeah.